So once again, thank you all for joining us, and welcome to you all, and especially to Joanna Pollard, who's going to be leading us through this Future of Fair Trade campaigning session. So I'm now going to mute myself and pass over to Joanna. Thank you very much, Joanna.
Thanks, Sally. Hello, everybody. As I say, my name is Joanna Pollard. I'm the chair of the National Campaigner Committee. I was elected about 2 months ago to that position. I've actually only been part of the National Campaigner Committee since last summer. So the committee basically consists of representatives from all of the regions and nations around the UK. So Scotland, Wales. I was the Yorkshire representative. I'm actually moving over to the northwest, so I'm going to be representing that region shortly. But we have people from all over the UK and lots of different interests and backgrounds. My background is I've been a fair trade campaigner for the last 15 years. I started my business in 2005 as a fair trade business, and then got involved in BAFTS, which is the Association for Fair Trade Shops, where the UK's network member of WFTO, obviously Shared Interest is also a member of WFTO, and we have created a community of the fair trade shops and suppliers that you have in your communities, and who are basically promoting the ideas around fair trade. I was on the board of BAFTS for 6 years, which is 2 full terms. I was also the chair for the last 4. So I've got a real sort of background in working within lots of different types of fair trade. My current local group is the York Fair Trade Forum, and I was involved in getting fair trade status for Glossopdale when I lived over there. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I'll start to share some of my ideas about where fair trade campaigning is going for us in the UK. Okay, so this is me. Some of you may have signed my petition last year. I was asked last year to front the campaign for KitKat to stay fair trade. Now, Nestle, about 10 years ago, decided that they wanted to go fair trade with the KitKats, the 4-finger and 2-finger KitKats, which was a fantastic thing for them to do. And it had a huge impact on the cocoa and sugar farmers over the last 10 years. And what's happened is that one of the big problems we had was that a lot of fair trade campaigners felt that we shouldn't be working with multinationals. We shouldn't be working with the sort of people who have a bad reputation. So Nestle has always been renowned. There's been boycotts against Nestle for at least 40 years, as far as I can remember. And there was a thought that maybe we shouldn't be working with people like that. And so when it came round to last summer, and Nestle made the announcement that they were moving away from fair trade and setting up their own certification scheme, then we had a bit of a problem. And so I was asked to be the face of the campaign to keep KitKat fair trade, to support the farmers and workers in the global south who were growing the cocoa and sugar that was going into KitKats. So one of the best ways that we can campaign, mobilise and to do petitions. So my petition, which I put up on change.org, it ended up with 285,000 people all over the world signing it. And the image that you can see here is the day of action that we had on the 1st of October, where we, a group of us from York Fair Trade Forum, went and stood outside the Nestle headquarters in York and protested, basically. So those are the 2 of the sort of really active ways that that we can campaign within our communities and within fair trade. So fair trade communities, what I suppose internationally it's called the Fair Trade Towns movement. Now, most of you probably know who Bruce Crowther is. Bruce started the Fair Trade Towns movement. He had the idea in 1994, and the first fair trade town was Garstang, and that was 20 years ago. This year, actually, the 22nd of November, I'm reliably informed, was the first time that a community was granted fair trade town status. This is the last statistics that I can find, so it's from a couple of years ago, but you can see fair trade communities is the way that we have traditionally campaigned for fair trade in the UK. One of the reasons the National Campaigner Committee is made up of regions and nations is because there are so many fair trade communities, almost 700 just in the UK and around about 2,000 around the world. And it has a big impact because people are working in the way that works for them within their communities. Then they know that some of them have got local fair trade shops that they like to work with, others have great relationships with the co-op, or they'll work with people like shared interests. They'll be working with whoever it is within their community that they think will have the biggest impact. And all of this has been coordinated traditionally by the Fair Trade Foundation. So fair trade communities is a great way of campaigning. It means that you can work locally, but you can take part in national and also global actions. World Fair Trade Day was last month, and lots of communities got on board with that. It had the sort of slogan was "Build Back Fairer," which I think we can all agree with. That's something that we need to be getting on board with. Building Back Fairer has it's a sort of obvious thing, but actually we've been given an opportunity by the pandemic to think about what we want to do and whether the world works. And we as fair trade campaigners know that the world doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't work for the farmers and workers and artisans in the global south who make the things that we love to buy. And so changing that has felt like something that we could get on board with as we move out of the pandemic. The goals for fair trade communities, there's 5 set goals to do with the amount of products that are freely available in your community. You need to set up a steering group, which obviously means that it can't just be one person working on their own. Quite often it is, with 1 or 2 people helping them. The local council, it's really important that we get local authorities on board, and the local council traditionally, they've had to pass a resolution and they have to commit to serving fair trade refreshments in their meetings. Now, one of the problems, of course, right now with refreshments in meetings is that there are none because all of the meetings are virtual. So anybody that's trying to do that at the moment, they're really struggling. And then it's about being able to promote the work that that fair trade does in the global south and how we pull together to support that work, getting it into your local paper, publicising it on social media, all of the different things that we can do to help promote and support that. And over 600 fair trade places in the UK, over 2,000 globally. The UK is only one of 180 countries. So you can see that there are far more fair trade places in the UK proportionately compared to globally. And there are, I think, several reasons for that. And one of the reasons is because the Fair Trade Foundation has taken ownership of the whole sort of fair trade communities idea. And so they coordinate the whole thing around the UK. And it's really, really simple because it's about the fair trade mark. It's look for products with this mark. Yorkshire is a fair trade region, as you can see, and all fair trade communities get one of these little logos that they can use, whether they're a town, a village, a zone, whatever. But the simple message is it's about that mark. This is what fair trade campaigning used to look like. This is me a couple of years ago at a local event in York. We had a breakfast meeting every fair trade fortnight, and we would invite local councillors, local business people to come along and find out more about fair trade. This is something that all fair trade communities, it's the sort of thing that that happens all around the country during Fair Trade Fortnight. So this is what campaigning used to look like, and this is what campaigning has looked like for the last 12 months. This is actually the Baths conference that we did last month, and as part of it was the day after World Fair Trade Day, so we were going for sort of Build Back Fairer as a message, but also it's part of the Wave of Hope. Now, the Wave of Hope is something that we're doing in conjunction with lots of other charitable organisations, and it's for the G7, so that's something that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. And so we're encouraging people to make hands and basically promote the idea of a wave of hope. Because the G7's in Cornwall and it's coastal, and the idea of waves, it felt like something that the Fairtrade Foundation should be getting involved with. A couple of years ago, it was the 25th birthday of the Fairtrade mark. So this is 2019, and I spent a Saturday morning drawing a massive Fairtrade mark on the Trinity Square in Hull. And then we got some volunteers to come in and basically form the Fairtrade mark. The big lettering is from when the Tour de France came to Yorkshire, and we created some land art to promote fair trade. The idea being, obviously, you've got aerial cameras. So it was bigger than that. I think it said Fairtrade Yorkshire in huge 2-metre high letters, and that was pinned out on one of the fields next to where the cyclists from the Tour de France were going to be. And so when the cameras took the picture, they saw Fairtrade Yorkshire being promoted. So it's just, there's lots of interesting ways that we can promote the idea of fair trade and get the name out there and get the word out there and get the mark better known for people. This was something this image is used by the Fairtrade Foundation on a lot of their promotional materials, and when you see a presentation by them, they'll quite often use this one as well. And it was great because it meant that we could get volunteers involved. So the City of Culture, Hull was a City of Culture a couple of years ago, and the volunteers who worked on the City of Culture have carried on wanting to volunteer in new and interesting ways, and so it was really easy to get them involved with this project as well. So this is just one of the ways that I have got involved with campaigning not outside of the traditional ways, and bringing in people who wouldn't necessarily have come to an event that I'd organised. So one of the problems that we have with a lot of fair trade organisations and the communities is that, like, York Fair Trade Forum has been in existence since 2004. So over the 15-16 years, you get to the stage where you're doing the same things over and over again. And when you're having the same event every Fair Trade fortnight and the same few people are coming, you don't feel like you're having enough of an impact. And so it's a case of, well, where do we go now? What else can we do to campaign within our communities? And almost, how do we redefine community? Because the two images that I just showed you, the first one where I was in York and I was with other fair trade campaigners and the councillors, and then the second one, that was the BAFTA conference, and there were people on that call from all over the UK, and we all came together, and we've got something in common, we've got a reason to be together, and I'm sure that's the case on this call today. There's people from all over the UK. You will have been to other events in this series with people from all over the world, and that's one of the wonderful things about fair trade, is it connects us with people all over the world, and in particular the farmers and workers. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to share something else with you now. Last year, I was working with a gentleman who is a fair trade banana farmer, and he decided that he loves fair trade so much that he wanted to help promote fair trade, and this is what he came up with. I'm hoping you can hear it.
It's our responsibility to support and rally behind fair trade, because there is no organization in the world that stands with farmers as fair trade does. Now, let's go!
Nobody support producers and farmers like we do. Nobody honor producers and farmers like we do.
Like we do.
Nobody connect producers and farmers to consumers. All producers and farmers all around the world, struggling for better prices, better working conditions, better terms of trade, new hope for the world, new hope for the world. A fairer trade begins, a fairer trade begins. New hope for the world, a fairer trade begins, a fairer trade begins. Producers and farmers all around the world, struggling for better prices, better working conditions, better terms of trade, new hope for the world, new hope for the world. A fairer trade begins, a fairer trade begins. New hope for the world. A fairer trade begins, a fairer trade begins.
Yeah, there are over 6,000 fair trade products on the market. When you shop, look for the fair trade mark. Buy fair and donate today.
Nobody support producers and farmers like we do.
So that was Richard, my friend Richard. He came up with 3 separate different songs for us for Fairtrade Fortnight, and we did an entire evening in the arts festival that I organised during Fairtrade Fortnight. And I think that's, when you hear direct from producers, when you hear direct from the people who are actually benefiting from Fairtrade. So he works for Golden Exotics in Ghana, which is a banana, predominantly bananas. They also do pineapples and that sort of thing. And yeah, if you want to hear more of his music, you can go to the Fairtrade Yorkshire YouTube channel, because all 3 of his songs are on there in the videos that he made. So what I wanted to do was to basically support him in doing whatever he wanted. So I gave him some money and he made those videos himself. And it was up to him, and it was giving him a voice to be able to share his experiences and the things that he understands about fair trade and the impact that it has. And I think when you speak to somebody direct, that makes such a difference. And I think for me, farmers as activists, farmers as campaigners is the most important thing that we can do. I'm trying to move this on. So there's a couple of other farmers that we're hearing from. So this is a coffee farmer in India, and it says climate change is responsible for a decline in production and poor growth for our crops. We've got a cocoa farmer from Cote d'Ivoire, and he said climate change is a global issue. We, the farmers, have to deal with its consequences every day. So it's about listening to the people on the ground and what they're telling you about the things that we need to do. So this is why we're partnering with other organisations in the Climate Coalition and working to do important work to basically mitigate the effects of climate change on the farmers and workers in the global south. The future, I think, of fair trade is about collaborating. So fair trade is part of the Climate Coalition, but we're also working with them on the Great Big Green Week. In Scotland, it's called Climate Fringe Week, but it's the same week. So it's the 18th to the 26th of September this year. And it's about working together. So one of the things that they're supporting is for us to, as fair trade communities, as fair trade groups, to work with other groups in our communities. So working with, maybe there's a Greenpeace group, maybe there's a Friends of the Earth group, maybe there's a sort of local recycling organisation. Maybe it's Transition Towns, maybe it's something to do with the WI or the Soroptimists, or lots and lots of other people who are working also within our communities. And I think we're stronger together. I think if we work just as our own little group of fair trade campaigners, and maybe there's half a dozen of us, and maybe we've been the same half dozen for the last 10 years or so, and that can get disheartening. Whereas if you find that you can collaborate either with a fair trade group in a different town, the next door place, or with people also working within your community that have shared aims, it feels like we can achieve more if we do more collaboration. Fashion Revolution Week is another one of the things that that fair trade campaigners wanted to get involved in, and it isn't all around the fair trade mark. This is one of the interesting things, is that what we want really as fair trade campaigners, we don't just want people to buy more chocolate. We do want people to buy chocolate that's got the fair trade mark on when they have a choice between that and one that doesn't have the fair trade mark on. We want to be empowering and educating people to make those choices. But equally, we want the system to change. We want the system that led to almost 1,500 people dying in Bangladesh in 2013 when their factory collapsed. We want that system to change. We want the system whereby cocoa farmers are paid 75p a day. We want that system to change. We want all of these systems to be fairer. And that isn't just about buying a Kit Kat with a fair trade mark on compared to a Kit Kat with the Rainforest Alliance mark on. There's lots of other things that we need to do, and campaigning around changing the way fast fashion works, and campaigning around changing the way climate change is affecting farmers and workers. It's about having higher standards. And one of the things that people often say to me about the fair trade mark is that what's the gold standard? And that's right for the industries in which fair trade mark applies. So it's absolutely gold standard in cocoa, in tea and coffee, and those sorts of things. But there are other ways of making sure that we have high standards. One of the things that really matters to me is the 10 principles of fair trade, which are curated by the World Fair Trade Organization. Now, I actually work for the World Fair Trade Organization in my day job, in collaboration with the Social Enterprise UK. So again, it's all about collaboration. We're working together because it's about social and fair trade enterprise. It's about seeing the synergies between what people are doing in the UK in terms of the social enterprises that support people with mental health difficulties or homeless people, and the organisations that work around the world supporting people who want to adhere to these 10 principles. So this is what they are. So we've got opportunities for disadvantaged producers, transparency and accountability, fair trade practices, fair payment, obviously that's the big one, and no child labour. Those are the two that people think most, I think, when they think about fair trade. So no discrimination. One of the greatest things that the thing that brings me back to fair trade every time I think about it is the Women's School of Leadership in Cote d'Ivoire, because that was financed by the co-op, and it's only been in existence for 4 or 5 years, but it has a huge impact on the way women farmers think about themselves and the way they farm and the way they operate, and it's been enormously empowering for them. But also because it's open to men as well, men can see the systemic problems that women farmers face, and that's really important, is that women can't do this on their own. We need everybody's support, and I think being able to change people's preconceived ideas is really important for fair trade campaigners, because we do all have preconceived ideas, and so many people will tell you that the world can't change. that this is how it is, that systemic change isn't possible. And it absolutely is. We can have incremental change in the interim, so we can improve, you know, somebody's income from 75p to £2 a day, but ultimately we want it to be fairer and better for people. Capacity building is one of the most important things that we can do, because it's about helping people understand what they can do and how they can harness their potential. How we can help people fulfill their potential is the most important thing that we do as fair trade campaigners, and it really feels like we can do that. And then promotion of fair trade that's what we're all about, and obviously respect for the environment. It didn't used to be something that people thought about within fair trade, but it absolutely is now. We're going more down the route of mitigating the effects of climate change. And it's basically about these people. It's all about people. So these are the ladies that work in one of the WFTO members in Vietnam, and they make bags for Earth Squared. So some of you may already own a bag from Fair Squared, or from Earth Squared, or you may have seen them. And these are the ladies that make them. A lot of them have got disabilities. Some of them have come out of abusive relationships, and it's about supporting them and promoting them. And it just shows you, this is part of a fashion revolution campaign from a few years ago. So it's about showing that actually garment manufacture can be done fairly, it can be done properly, and why wouldn't you? So it's about choosing a fairer world. It's about us saying, this is the world that we want, this is where we want to get to. This is one of the beautiful graphics that were made for the Fair Trade Fortnight festival that we had this year. And it kind of sums it up, because it's a global movement, and it's not just about, you know, the white hand coming in, and we're not white saviours. We need to be promoting people. Black Lives Matter. And a lot of those Black lives are in the global south, and a lot of those people are working hard to produce the products that we want to buy. So we need to be harnessing their voices. We need to be finding the people that have something to say about fair trade from a personal perspective, the producers, and giving them a voice and giving them an opportunity to share their stories. And that's how we nurture our world, because our world is people. The world is made up of people, and we are the custodians of it, we, humanity, and the farmers in particular. The first image that I showed you was me standing effectively on a picket line protesting against Nestle. That was quite a noisy protest, even though we were all wearing masks. This is a much quieter way of campaigning, craftivism. It's something that I really like, because not everybody can get out and stand and get arrested and protest and be noisy. We can do things in our own homes, just to quietly protest. And I love this manifesto, where it's about doing it slowly. It's about thinking about the messages that we want to get out there and crafting something with our own hands that says, this is about us standing with you. So solidarity and not sympathy, that's important. Comforting contemplation. Empathy never points fingers. Small and beautiful. That's lovely. And humility holds the key. So it's not about saying, I'm the best campaigner in the world, everybody look at me. It's about saying, I can learn from people. I can learn from others' experiences. Provoke, don't preach. So it's thinking about, how do we make people think? Because if you start talking at people, they switch off. But if you give them something to think about, then they'll go away and think about it, and then you may change minds there. And then positivity is really important, and making the change you wish to see. So it's up to us. Now tonight there is an event on with Bournemouth University, and we're all coming together and we're going to handcraft a hand, and we're going to make a wave of hope. And it's all about bringing us together from all over the UK again. And the future for campaigning, it's entirely up to us. It's up to us to decide. We are the campaigners. We are the people who decide how we want to get our message across. So what I want the National Campaigner Committee to do is to empower the campaigners to get that message across in whatever way works for them. So it needs to be led by the people who are on the ground, who are working hard, who are making and growing the things that we want to buy. But it's about some systemic change. So just buying a few more chocolate bars isn't going to change the world. We need to be campaigning for things to be different. And this is where shared interest is great, because it's a completely different way of financing what's going on in the global south. It's about making sure that people have the opportunity to fulfill their potentials. It's a wonderful organisation. It's about collaborating, working with partnerships, but it's also about that solidarity between the consumer and the producer. So we, as the global north, we're the consumers of the products, but we need to have solidarity with workers in the global south. It's about being kind, but it's about taking the opportunity that we've been given by this pause, this global pause that was forced on us, to build back fairer and to think about how we can do that and how we can choose the world that we want. So for me, it's about combining the two areas of fair trade. So fair trade, one word, capital letter, that's how it's always been in the UK in terms of fair trade communities. But I think working with the 10 principles, working with other organisations that are acting in the same sphere that we are, we can choose change, we can make things happen. And I'm really excited about the possibilities.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Wow, fantastic. Thank you. We do, I think, have a few minutes, if you're okay for time, Joanna, to take any questions or comments that people might have. Just a reminder to everyone that we are recording this session. If you ask a question and your video is on, you will appear in the recording. So if you do not wish to be visible, please turn off your video before asking your question. You might also need a reminder to unmute your microphone. I know that in the chat there was a question about tonight's event, Joanna. I don't know if you can share more information about how people can potentially participate in that. If that's a link, I'm happy for you to send that to me and we can then share that with everybody. Or if it's
I think that's probably easiest, because it's not me that's organised it. It's the Fair Trade Foundation, so I'll send you the link.
Right, and I'll make sure that everybody on the call at the moment gets that, no problem at all. So if there are any further questions, please do unmute yourself and ask away. Just a reminder also, if you don't want to appear in the recording, to turn your video off as well, please. Thank you. I see there's a question in the chat.
Where am I moving to? Yeah, Hadfield. So yeah, basically it's about 15 miles outside Manchester. If you've ever seen The League of Gentlemen, it's Royston Vasey. That's where I'm moving to. So that's where they shot The League of Gentlemen, and it genuinely is like that. Everybody knows everybody else. It's a very strange place, but I love it.
Fantastic. And does Royston Vasey know what to expect? Do they know you're coming?
I lived there for 7 years before, so yeah, it may remember me.
Brilliant. We'll keep an eye out for it on the Fair Trade map, I'm sure. Excellent. Are there any other questions for Joanna or comments at all? Colin, it looks like you've got a question, maybe.
Hi, Joanna. I'm just wondering what you thought about campaigning through influencing the big retailers in stocking fair trade products. To my mind, that sounds like quite an influential thing you could do. I mean, for instance, Waitrose, if you buy a banana from Waitrose, they're all fair trade. So I imagine that must have made a big difference to fair trade producers. I just wonder what you thought of that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because one of the interesting things about the UK is that so much of what we buy comes through supermarkets. So you're actually never going to succeed with systemic change unless you get the supermarkets on board, because the reason that 1 in 3 bananas is fair trade in the UK is because you go into Sainsbury's, you go into the Co-op, you go into Waitrose, and you don't have a choice. If you want a banana, you are buying a fair trade banana. I've often said that fair traders are an unusual bunch in that we don't want our job to exist. I don't want fair trade to exist in 25 years' time, because I want all trade to be fair. I want the default to be fair trade, and that there to be a thing of unfair trade that's the thing, you know, the worst possible scenario. And at the moment, the default is unfair trade, and fair trade is a very small niche. And it's a case of, one of the ways that we do it, there's basically 2 ways we can tackle it. We either make the ethical companies bigger, or we make the big companies ethical. We need to do both. So we need to be supporting businesses that are ethical, which is one of the reasons that I'm involved with the eBay for Change, because actually changing, eBay for Change does both. So eBay is an enormous organisation, and we are trying to make it more ethical by encouraging it to support fair trade and social enterprises. But equally, those individual fair trade and social enterprises, through partnership with eBay, are going to get bigger. So actually the market share that goes to ethically run businesses has got to improve. So yeah, you do both. So it's a 2-pronged approach, and definitely working with supermarkets, because that's where we shop, that will have a huge impact. One of the problems that we have, of course, is that things are tight for all of us, really, but certainly supermarkets are always looking for ways that they can cut costs. And so we need to be loud in our communities to say we are not prepared. Exactly what happened with the Sainsbury's campaign when they switched their own brand tea from fair trade to fairly traded, and we weren't having any of that. So we went, I remember standing outside fair trade, standing outside Sainsbury's in York doing a photo shoot, looking sad with teapots. But they didn't like that, and we went in with a petition, and we handed a letter to the assistant manager, who said, I completely agree with you, to be fair, that they shouldn't have been doing it. And one of the worries that we had was that would be the thin end of the wedge, and that they would start bringing in other products that were fairly traded rather than fair trade, and that hasn't happened. So we, as campaigners and activists, we can have an important role within our communities to stand up and say, we're not prepared to put up with this. I think one of the things that I've started doing as Fair Trade Yorkshire's Twitter account, I do this thing called Adventures in Fair Trade. So whenever I find something that's unusual, that's got a fair trade mark on it, or it's from a WFTO producer, I'll tweet about it. And I'm finding that in Lidl, there's lots and lots of products that have got the white fair trade mark. So they're part of the cocoa programme. But actually, having spoken to cocoa farmers in Cote d'Ivoire and in Ghana, I know how important that is for them. And so being able to see the fair trade mark and to publicise the fact that you're buying this because it's got the fair trade mark on it, that makes a big difference, I think, because nobody's going to be doing that with Rainforest Alliance. Nobody's going to be doing that with us. Nobody's doing it with all of these lesser marks. We care, show we care, publicise it, and absolutely we have to work with the big boys and make them more ethical, because that's where the money is.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm conscious of time here, but Ian, I see you've just popped up, so we'll come to Ian for your question, and then if there are any further questions, do feel free to send those through to myself, and we'll make sure that we get a response from Joanna with those. So Ian, over to you for your question. Thank you. Did you have a question, Ian?
Ian's is not muted, but I can't hear him.
No, we seem to be having a problem with your audio, Ian, unfortunately. It looks like you're not muted. Do you want to ask it in the chat if you have that capacity?
There we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, hi, Chris. Sorry. Yeah.
Hello. If Ian wants to type away, I'll start speaking if that's all right.
No problem.
Okay. Just a couple of thoughts and observations, really, and catching up. Fantastic. Really enjoyed the presentation, Joanne. That was superb. Really, really, really good. Zoom, for me, has been a bit of a revolution, and I just think that must create us a whole load of new opportunities for doing things in different ways. But I campaign across so many areas that, you know, fair trade is, forgive me, but one of them. But I think it's very complementary, the sort of areas I campaign in. So it's loads on climate change and all the rest of it. But one thing that I just think that would help either shared interest, and so I raised this as a thought, and if you said you work for, I'm not quite sure, you said something like the World Fair Trade Organization you work for, or something like that. But, well, in the past, and some of you'll remember somebody like Duncan Rees from the Co-op, we would have brought a producer over from Costa Rica or somewhere. Well, I suspect that the world will not be doing so much of that anymore, partly because of the mileage and the cost and the climate change. But if you could vet and shared interest could line them up and vet them and sort them out for us and tell us who you've got, we could sort of book them for 1 or 2 Zoom presentation events. And you could get them at a predictable time, be it around Fair Trade Fortnight or approaching Christmas or around Easter or whenever you thought were the clever moments to go for the opportunity. So what we need, therefore, is a sort of a background. Say we wanted one on tea, or we wanted one from Costa Rica, or we wanted something from Uganda. Do you see what I mean? So there are a variety of divisions. So I just wonder if Zoom is an opportunity, therefore, for us all. I will be working at the festivals with Oxfam on climate change. So I do wonder if Oxfam should be one of our big kind of partner ideas. And I lob in now because it wasn't mentioned, but I see that they're coming in lots of towns, Incredible Edible. And they're working on food in this country, but they're a good group to engage with on all issues at food and climate change.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I know WFTO Europe is working on a project around local food. That sounds really interesting, and I know that's something that a lot of local groups are involved with. So one of the groups not far from me is Pocklington, and their fair trade group is called the Fair Trade and Local Action Group. So it's all about the synergies between supporting employment in rural areas in the UK, basically, which is what farming is, as well as in the global south. So yeah, absolutely, there's lots of synergies. And I think you're right that one of that Zoom offers huge opportunities to speak direct to farmers and workers. One of the things that the NCC wants to do is to put together a series of events and offer them as something that groups can come together in person, so you have your standard sort of steering group meeting for an hour or so, and you watch one of the events that the NCC has curated for you, and then there's a discussion afterwards. And that's something that I think offers lots of potential. And I think hybrid events where people are in a room, but then also it's either live streamed or it's recorded and people can tune in at the same time. That's something that we did with the BAFS conference in 2019 in Manchester. Everything that wasn't sort of commercially sensitive, we just live streamed it on Facebook. So anybody who wasn't able to be there in person, they could watch it, and they could watch it on catch up, and you know that you don't have to do things in real time as well. So there's huge opportunities that the fact that we are all sitting in our houses and we're able to talk to each other, and whether we're on a tea farm or a banana farm or a coffee farm or in a garment factory or in a basket weaving factory or all of those places, you know, little workshops. Zaytoun and Hadil as well. Hadil did a few events where they went into Palestinian workshops, and we saw people making things, and that's so lovely, just being able to make that connection to a place that you're probably never going to visit. We can be all over the world and not leave our home offices. It's great.
It certainly is, isn't it? It's fantastic, and it's so fantastic to be able to have you all joining us from all your parts of the UK at the moment, not quite the world. And thank you for those points, Christopher. Because of time, I am going to draw us to a close now, but as I say, if you do have any further questions, comments for Joanna, do email them through and we'll pass them on. Ian had an observation which was really around the idea of kind of fair trade versus price sort of thing, and so was just commenting that it was good for you to highlight Lidl as being able to address both of those points, the affordability perhaps of products as well as the fair trade mark. And also just going back to your point in the last session there, the last sort of question there about Zoom and the capacity that it enables us to reach further afield. We do currently have a couple of events coming up. We're halfway through our latest series of member events, which this year have been online using Zoom. And we have been joined by producers at the previous two events, and we have upcoming the two events. We have producers from Chile and Nicaragua joining us in the next few weeks. So head over to our website for details of those in case you haven't spotted those. So I would just like to say a huge thank you to Joanna for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your enthusiasm, your passion, your time, your commitment to the cause, and I know that anybody who's on the call who's met you knows that you're just fizzing and bubbling with fair trade energy. So that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on what the future of fair trade campaigning looks like. As this does form part of our Volunteers Week celebrations, I just want to close by sharing with you our special message to you all. Thank you very much for all that you do supporting shared interests. So a little thank you from our friends Super Avo and Captain Coco there. So thank you again. As I say, if you do have any questions or comments, do send them through and we'll certainly share those details of that event tonight with you, and we'll pass on anything else that Joanna might want to share with you as well, and that she shares. So thank you again, Joanna, and thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you again maybe this afternoon at some of our other sessions. Take care, everyone.